Yesterday, a new anime Star Wars anthology series titled Star Wars Visions premiered on Disney+. Each segment has a little bit to talk about, so now I'm going to rank all 9 shorts of Star Wars Visions from worst to best. Coming in at last place is Episode 4, The Village Bride. Honestly, I found this episode really boring and it didn't really hold my attention. The plot just really was not that interesting. It was very slow. Almost nothing happened until the end. And it had the policy of tell, don't show. Like, they're telling us about how the bad guys invaded and used the separatist droids. They invaded House Occupation, but they tell it rather than showing it. And it was kind of the cliche, they took over the farm or they took over the village and we're going to team up to fight. Like, we've seen that before. It didn't really have any new ideas with it. It relied way too much with exposition. It gave us way too much information in such a short period of time. The script just was not that solid for this one. Number 8, Episode 2, Tatooine Rhapsody. While it was cool seeing Boba Fett in anime form, the story was weak. The stakes are not that high. It's just kind of a cute little thing that exists. There wasn't really any urgency or anything to the story. It was just kind of an excuse to throw Boba Fett in there for an anime and I guess kind of do, if you're a fan of like Japanese music, like Japanese rock music, K-pop or whatever, you'll enjoy that. But if you're not really a K-pop fan, there's not really that much to it. Number 7, Akakori. I didn't really connect with this one. The characters were not that interesting and the villain's motivations were cliche. Hey, join the dark side, come over to the dark side, we have cookies. But the main character joins the dark side for the same reason that Anakin does. Because he lost the one he loves, and the Sith promises him, hey, I will teach you how to save the one you love if you just come over to the dark side. And it's just Revenge of the Sith. They just reused too many ideas from Revenge of the Sith. It felt like a condensed 20-minute version of that movie. It just didn't do anything really new at all. It felt way too familiar. Number 6, Episode 7, The Elder. This episode is so frustrating for me because it has a really solid script with ideas about power and corruption, but the line delivery in the voice acting is so emotionless that all of the compelling ideas it's trying to convey get lost. The master and apprentice have a very great dynamic, but their line delivery is so wooden and emotionless. Like this part where the apprentice is going to fight the big Sith Lord at the end, and the master says that he's going to die, so he tries to speak to him through the Force, he just goes, run. Like, your apprentice is about to be killed, and you're putting it with just such robots, you're just like, run. Like, okay, like, and that's the entire episode. All of their lines are delivered so wooden and so phoned in. The villain had a really good voice actor, and he did such a good job. He was really cartoony, which just kind of brought that down a little bit. Was the voice actors just didn't sound that interested, like they didn't want to be there. Number 5, Episode 6, Toby-Wan. I really enjoyed the Astro Boy and Teenage Robot animation style, and it was really cool seeing a Sith Inquisitor, but the main character story is just Luke. It's exactly the same. He lives on a farm, and he wants to learn the ways of the Force, and then he learns the ways of the Force from the Wise Mentor. The Wise Mentor dies. The Sith Lord invades. He sees the ghost of his Wise Mentor. He fights the Sith Lord, and he wins. Like, you just took Luke Skywalker from New Hope, you made him a robot, and you literally did the exact same movie. Like, I don't know. Number 4, Episode 5, The Ninth Jedi. I don't think the main character being named Ethan, I don't think that's very Star Warsy, though it does expand the mythology of the lightsaber very well, and it had a great twist, but the problem is, it feels like a part 1. It feels like build up to a much richer story. Like, it's such a good twist, the twist ending happens awesome, and I want to see what happens, and I like this character, and I want to see the story continue. But that's it. And these are all one-shots, and nothing happens. So if this story doesn't continue, it's pointless. All these other ones, except for like one other episode, were pretty self-contained. Like, they all had a pretty good self-contained story. This just feels like build-up for a part 2. Number 3, Episode 8, Lop and Ocho. The idea of having a rabbit Jedi was very creative and different. Kind of reminded me of the character of Usagi Yojimbo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The animation in this episode was absolutely beautiful, and it had very rich world building and character development, but just like the previous episode on this list, it also ends on a cliffhanger. There was such a great character dynamic, and I wanted to see what happened next, but neither of these characters really have any sort of conclusion to their arcs because they decide to end it on a here's what might happen next. That's frustrating. Number 2, The Duel. Felt very much like a classic samurai film, which is what George Lucas was trying to convey, because he has gone on record saying that classic samurai films were a huge influence in the making of the Star Wars trilogy, and it very much felt like a throwback to that. It also reminded me of the 2003 Clone Wars series, directed by Gennady Tartakovsky, who also directed Samurai Jack. It had a great twist ending, and I really liked how it was kind of black and white and grainy, like an old samurai film. But having so much Japanese culture surrounding it kind of took me out of it, because the buildings look Japanese, the swords look Japanese, it just looks like someone took a samurai movie and then edited it with a video program to make everything look like it has a lightsaber. But I did think that the way that they put the stormtroopers and everything looked really good, because they look different enough that it's clearly not Star Wars, but it's also familiar enough that you can tell what they are. But it also kind of took me out of it because it just looks like somebody took a samurai film and then did a Star Wars mod over it. So that was a little, kind of took me out of it here and there, even though it was a pretty good episode. Though it was a really solid opening to the show. But the best episode of the series is The Twins. This had the most interesting story, the most interesting characters, it had a very interesting dynamic, and it was probably the most well-choreographed action of this entire series. I really like the idea of there were these two Sith twins that were born on the ship, and one decided to join the light side, and the other one decided she was going to stay on the dark side, and they fight, and it's like if Leia had joined the dark side, and Luke had to turn her back. That's kind of what that felt like. It's like, hey, these twins, but what if Leia had turned bad? It's like, that's a really cool scenario, and it was really well done. I thought the voice acting for this was really solid. It actually held my attention the most. I was actually the most excited with this episode. It really throws you in. It really kept my attention. It's the best episode of the show, so it comes in at number 1. So share your ranking of the shorts and Star Wars Visions. Do I have opinions? You're like, oh, you're kind of wrong on that? Let me know in the comments below. I will see you next time.